Your left eye. TLC.
I ain't gonna worry about it. Guess that makes you T-bombs.
Not chilly.
Oh boy!
All right, welcome to our Friday Flex. This is your host Keith and Joseph. So, hold, wait.
Hold up. Wait a minute.
What? Come on now.
Shimon it. You didn't charge it?
It was charged.
No.
Well, okay, full battery.
Now that's bright.
Yeah, that's bright.
That's real bright. I think it works now.
Yeah, I think it works. Okay, welcome to our Friday Flex. This is your host, Joseph, Keith and Joseph.
Yes, I'm Joseph. And that's Keith. Changing bodies.
Hey, it's gonna happen. Every 7 years. All right, my
anywhere between 7 to 10 years.
17 years.
Yeah, but the nerve cells, we don't change those. Those are the same ones we had since we were a child. So once they're damaged, that's it. They're damaged.
Wow. All right. Okay, so we were talking about communication. This is going to probably be a 9 to 10 part session, communication, which is great. So we can get to dive in, go deeper, and swim. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We don't go chasing waterfalls, but we're just going to swim in. Okay? Yeah. And so last week we were talking about passive communication, and I actually had a couple people ask me more about passive communication and to be a little more specific. And so we're going to go deeper into passive communication as well as kind of involve a little bit of enneagram into it.
But is there any aggressive aspect associated with that passive?
Not yet.
So we're just going to straight passive, not passive aggressive, not like.
We'll see what the time is. We may jump into that. I think there's a.
I know we were reading about passive aggressive last time.
It was passive.
Only just passive.
It was just passive. That was just passive.
Just the moment. Oh wow.
It was all passive. Yeah, that was all passive. So,
all right.
So, all right. So last week we finished on those 18 parts to the passive, at least from the reference source that I was using, and it's really a nice website called helpfulprofessor.com. And if anybody's in college and they have a research paper to do, it's pretty helpful. Wide variety of topics. But anyway, there's 18 points to passive communication, and I want to, so I'm going to read.
And that's continuing on from the what you were reading last week?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just didn't see that chart that was there last time.
The chart?
You had a chart that you were reading off of.
This one?
Yeah. Did you cover everything that you wanted to on that one?
Yeah.
Okay,
So, but there's more.
Of course.
Wait,
there's more. Number 4.
All right. Yeah. So number 4, sarcasm. All right. So I think that we're all familiar with this. So how this is involved in passive communication. So just sarcasm involves saying something but meaning the opposite. It is considered a form of humor. Sarcasm is often employed as a way to avoid confrontation and to protect oneself. For example, you may be able to deploy sarcasm in a way that expresses disagreement or dissatisfaction without directly saying it. So one of the things that comes to mind is I have somebody I know, and they'll say something like really sharp. I'm just playing, I'm just joking.
Or sometimes if, depending on, again, the circle and so forth, sometimes you'll have someone that may say, we're not all as enlightened as you are, or something like that.
Right.
It comes a certain way, and it's
yeah.
like, wait a second, you're being sarcastic there, It can be subtle.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's easy to miss it, but
there's I won't name any names because he doesn't have Facebook. I could name names because he doesn't have Facebook. But anyway, I won't name a name. But he'll often say, "You're funny, but looks aren't everything."
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
He'll say that. He'll say that.
Oh yeah.
So that's sarcasm.
Yeah. I'm not good at sarcasm. I wasn't sure if he was being funny or not. I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna let that one slide.
I don't know if this is a slide or you're just being you.
Right. Yeah. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
You somewhat, or to some extent, you have to somewhat know the person. Because there's some people who are just jokesters. Like I know I play around a lot.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't know if I have any experience with sarcasm. You know, like really being. You know, there's some people who are like really good at sarcasm, like being sarcastic. Yeah. I don't know if I have any of those skills. Not that I'm working on them. Just saying.
Yeah. You know, we'll read a little bit more and kind of go deeper into these different elements of passive communication. So it can often be used to lighten the mood or to make a point in a less confrontational way, which may end up being beneficial. However, it can also be hurtful, disrespectful, or poorly used, leading to strained relationships. So that's another element. Evasion. Not invasion, evasion, like to evade something. So a invasive person will try to avoid providing a response or a comment when it is socially appropriate for them to do so. For example, you might realize that it's about to be your turn to speak in an online meeting and suddenly your internet cuts off. or what are they?
Isn't there a song? Mr. Telephone Man. You know, this is with New Edition.
New Edition,
New Edition.
Yeah.
You know, every time I dial my baby's number, I get a click every time.
Evasive. Oh, that's it. We call in again. I think I'm gonna. Or you see it in movies where they start crumbling paper. Like I can't hear you. I think the phone's bad, and then hangs up. You know, as a way to avoid something that may be difficult to experience, or just not wanting to have to deal with it.
Or sometimes it's actually necessary. I'll give you an example. So when we were living in Detroit, and there was this one neighbor across the street. I won't say any names.
Okay.
Not that anyone would know the person anyway, but so that person was always the type of person that just trying to get into everyone's business, and then he would try to, in other words, trying to take up all my time and, just want to talk and yada, 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 and it really has no value or importance or significance in the conversation. So I don't have a piece of paper to go crunch, crunch. I think I gotta go, whatever like that. So my mom would say, "Hey Joey, you got a telephone call?" And then I was like, "I gotta go, Mr. Scott," and then I just run. So sometimes you need someone to, tag in, to help you with the evasiveness,
Yeah.
So, there's some people you just, you don't need to.
Yeah, I was thinking about sometimes when you're younger. Like for myself, I had a difficult time being vocal about how I felt in certain scenarios. So I remember my buddy Devin we would go out to, what is that place? It's like this indoor. This was in Michigan. It was like this indoor golf. And it had
It was
games.
like a putt golf or something.
Yeah, it was like putt. Well, it was putt golf and also
go-karts and stuff like that.
I think there were go-karts there. I don't know if you remember the place I'm talking about, but anyway.
I was always roller skating, man.
Yeah.
I was trying to, get my slide on.
So
or laser tag.
so anyway, So sometimes we would go out there to try to find a girl, you know, and or sometimes Devin would have a girl already ready just to talk to me. Sometimes this is how invasiveness works. So your invasiveness, and so I would, sometimes he would meet up with them, and I would kind of stand around looking just behind the wall just to make sure they.
Oh, they're hiding behind a bush.
And if I didn't like it, I'd just disappear. Wouldn't even come. Wouldn't even come around.
Beam me up, Scotty.
It's like I think like the Simpsons, Homer backing into the bush. Evasive.
Yeah, that was a hilarious scene. Yeah, that was some funny stuff.
So, just not being able to handle a situation and just finding ways to back out of it without vocalizing why. You just.
Let me give another example.
Okay.
Because I know we're just having a great time with this too. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with British humor. There was one show called Monty Python.
I'm familiar with Monty Python. Never could appreciate British humor.
Right. Now there was one guy that was really funny, and he was considered to be the local idiot. Okay. Now he did not. Now, he used evasiveness because he didn't want to deal with certain individuals.
Okay.
So he pretended to be an idiot. And so he was like this.
Yeah.
And so everyone would avoid him because they thought he was an idiot.
Right.
However, he was doing an interview with a news reporter, and he was like the most educated and intelligent person. He was like, yes, and blah, 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 blah. I went to Harvard, or I went to Oxford. I went to Oxford, and I did this and that, and I have a degree in philosophy and psychology, and and I do Tai Chi on the weekend, and someone walked So he would do that, so he could avoid, certain individuals. Mm-hmm. I guess in modern time, you would consider that person be almost like a little John. Yeah, okay. But then, when you catch him off somewhere, he's like, oh yes, I have a master's degree in business and administration. That's the crazy part. You have people who do that stuff, and they actually have like master degrees and so forth. And
yeah.
So
some people
he's educated, but he does it.
I think that I wonder if that would be called, because that's a little different than evasiveness, but.
I'm just saying in terms of just people just trying to avoid certain situations, just certain people. Just in that way.
Yeah. No, you're right. So let's look at number 5.
Yes.
Number 6. Submissive behavior. So submissiveness refers to situations where a person defers to other people as the leaders, often uncritically, which helps them to remain passive rather than active in social situations. There are many times in the past where I would be in a situation where I deserved to speak. I had all right to speak. Mm-hmm. I had something to say, but because I didn't feel like it was worthy to say, or I didn't feel like I was qualified, I would often defer the comment or defer the responsibility to someone else. I remember this is 4 or 5 years ago, but I remember in the yoga community that I operate or manage, the position of leadership was like, hey, here you go, gotta go, and I was just thinking to myself, I can't defer this to anybody right now. I guess I gotta go ahead and do this, but I think in the earlier time of my life, I would have been like, we gotta find somebody else because I can't do it, or find a way to avoid, having responsibility, so I would just pretty much just be submissive in that sense, where whatever else somebody says, whatever somebody else says, yeah, sure, let's go with that. You know, instead of having a voice to say something, to advocate, I think is probably a better word. Yes. And I think we kind of touched a little bit on it last week. Overly apologetic language.
Oh yeah.
So there's a little bit more here. It says apologizing when you're wrong, or, well, I mean, which is nothing wrong with that. You have to apologize when you're wrong. Or when you have expressed yourself in an insensitive manner, is of course positive and the right thing to do, but overuse of apologetic language, such as saying sorry when it's not necessary or doesn't suit a situation, can be seen as passive communication. There's a particular example of passive communication is a cultural touch point in English-speaking countries, because words like sorry are used extensively in British English in situations where you would not normally use them in American context. And it says, kind of conclusion to that, overall, over-apologizing can undermine a person's credibility and may convey a lack of confidence, and it comes across rightly or wrongly as having a negative self-image in certain circumstances. And I think about it too, when I hear somebody over-apologizing, I often, unfortunately, assume or conclude in my mind, oh, this person's probably not most fit for this situation. Or I may think, you know, like, calm down, like, it'll be all right. We'll get through this together, you know? and I've done it, as I mentioned before, when I first started as an agent, you know, I would profusely apologize, and I would, especially if this was in person, I would just kind of see the person's face turn from, you know, frustrated to like, chill out, you know, more like, all right, I get it, you know, you've apologized.
I would say don't want to be too like cutting or anything, but I would say there's two types of individuals. You have someone that made a genuine mistake. It's not that was their intention. It was just an honest mistake, and they apologize. And then you also have the type of person who is apologizing, but they know what they were doing. Meaning they have some motive behind it. Like they did something, and I'm sorry.
That would be passive
You know?
aggressive.
Okay. But you understand what I'm saying, right? Like really, they did that on purpose. There was intention behind that, but they say, "Oh, I'm sorry," because they make it appear like they're apologetic when really they're not sorry at all.
Actually, that would probably be the manipulative form of communication.
Because they're trying to manipulate.
Trying to manipulate. So that'll be for another day. But the two types. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, there may be more, but that's just the two that comes to my mind.
Yeah. And as mentioned in the explanation section, there's nothing wrong with, if you make a mistake, apologize. Like you should do that. Like that's mature. It's responsible. It's being an adult.
Living responsibly.
Yes, live responsibly. And at the same time, if you've sincerely apologized, then maybe once or twice, and no more than that, you know. And so, because that also further, if someone has a low self-esteem, by continually apologizing, that only continues to reduce it.
They're like flogging themselves, if that's the right word. Like they're like in one sense, beating themselves up
Right.
in public.
Right.
It's like nobody want to see that.
Yeah. Decent exposure.
I'm not into that.
Yeah. So that's number 7. Number 8, when a person makes jokes at their own expense. Now I will give an example of what comes to mind, but I'll find another one. Explanation: self-deprecating humor can be a passive way of dealing with insecurities or perceived shortcomings. It can also be used to fit in or deflect criticism. Pros: it can make a person appear modest or relatable, and it can lighten the mood in social situations. Cons: overuse can negatively affect self-esteem, and it can encourage others to disrespect others or undervalue the person. And another example that comes to mind is that, when we may say something and it is valid, and it may even be, we can reference it, like it's authoritative.
Gotcha.
However, we may say, "Oh, but I don't really know anything."
But what do I know?
What do I know?
What do I know? I just write insurance policy.
So that would be one form of.
But I said it because that mess really is funny.
It's funny. It's funny. Yeah. It's funny. It's funny. Yeah.
But in general, right, what you're saying, I understand exactly what you're pointing out. But yeah, in just lighthearted conversations, like just fooling around. Yeah. I may say that, depending on the audience or the crowd.
Yeah.
But
Depending on the audience. Yeah.
But what do I know?
I cross the street and look in both ways. What do I know? So, 9, withholding information or feelings. So, withholding information is a common trait of people who are passive communicators. They often feel like withholding information will help to avoid conflict. But intentionally, withholding information or emotions may also cause problems later. By preventing immediate conflict, you're also preventing others from having all the information they need to make an informed decision. Polite expressions of information and feelings in appropriate context is often more constructive long term. Furthermore, withholding of information can damage trust in relationships, create feelings of isolation and resentment. And so, while it's necessary for some things, I should have brought it. It's in my car actually, but so on Wednesdays I read from this book called Spiritual Warrior Series, Transforming Lust into Love, and the author B.T. Swami was mentioning that there's a difference between withholding secrets, being secretive, and being confidential. And he was saying that being secretive is really, it means, in essence, that we don't trust anyone, and we're trying to hide things that should be expressed. Confidential, and he gave an analogy of confidentiality, like and he says like a husband and wife, they have sex. That's confidential. No one needs to know. Like, people know it's happening, or if there's a kid that comes, but but like it
doesn't need to be broadcasted.
Yeah, it does, So there's confidentiality, and but he was stating B.T. Swami was stating that to know the difference, and he says one's personal life should be so transparent that if anyone found out about what's going on, they shouldn't be surprised. You know, and whereas confidentiality is like, hey, this information may it's just not that person's business in the sense of like, as I mentioned, he mentioned
Not supposed to be like a public, because it's confidential.
Yes. I'll try to find it later for next week, and I'll read this particular section just because I want to elaborate better on this point. But one should not. He was saying one should not hide one's relationship with anyone, like in the sense of. If there's, for example, he mentioned for the secretive aspect, he mentioned like in a spiritual community or some religious community, if there is abuse happening, if there is, if someone's having a relationship with someone else, that shouldn't be secretive. That should be public. He was saying that by developing secrecy, it creates distrust. Which is what was, as mentioned, withholding information can damage trust in relationships. And I remember, and this was in 2020, the end of 2020. I was dating a person, and the information I thought at that time should have been kept secret because, things weren't, I just thought that at that time, it was like this was August. I thought that at the time maybe people should know, and it ended up, even though it was, a very short encounter, it ended up hurting more people by me withholding the information than just being, hey, this is what's happening. And it was a very passive way of communication. It was an extremely passive way of communication. But if I would have been like, hey, this is what's going on, and then there wouldn't have been any surprises. And and I think that makes sense when you have information that will potentially surprise someone, especially if you have some level of respect for them and you have some level of care for how they may feel. If they knew this information, then that's the secret that doesn't need to be kept.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mama Switch said something. Okay. She said, I think that in some cases, a person may have offended a person will overly apologize out of guilt. This may be embarrassing to the person who has been offended. Yeah? But I see that, yes, I was guilty of this. Individuals who I can share with other deep information, but this particular thing I was withholding, extremely passive, and it ends up hurting others than actually saving myself the trouble, or saving myself the whatever somebody may think.
Is that like in a spiritual environment or something like that?
Wherever you have a responsibility to that other person. So, of course, if, for example, I'm not just going to tell everybody on the street, hey, this is the person I'm dating, But if we're close, meaning if I've opened my heart to them in some way, shape, or form, and I'm choosing to be secretive about this particular thing, we're still going to find out sooner or later. Then that's the kind of
I see. I see. Because I was thinking, I was thinking about other unique situations because I had like leadership training before, and so like in certain environments, like that's why I don't like. Just to give an example, that's why I do not interact or date or pursue relationships within the same group, because then there's this aspect which is really delicate, which is called abuse of power, right? Because of different dynamics and so forth like that. And so, yeah, those situations and those leadership training is not encouraged too, because then it becomes even an ethical situation too, right? So like teacher dating a student or something like that,
Right.
or someone that could be either like a doctor dating a client.
Right.
You know, like those things becomes ethical issues, or issues of ethics.
Yeah.
So,
Morality. Yeah.
Immorality.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Mom Swift timed in. I believe confidentiality involves trust and respect, while keeping something a secret involves sharing information when one is
Ready to disclose it. When they are ready to disclose it, yeah. And that's the other thing. Even when sharing certain things, for some individuals, like they have to be mindful in terms of with whom they share certain things with. But then you also have other individuals who, although they may care very much about the other, about that person and the relationship that they may be in, but you have other people who are like backseat drivers, and they're trying to direct and guide that person's relationship, and there's so much involved that they're not allowing that couple to actually develop their own pace and own rhythm, because they're trying to tell that couple what to do. And so then it's like, there's like a fine line, like some people just need to be given a little space so that they can work things out. Like everyone needs a little space, but depends on relationships. Everything is, depends on, again, respect, of course, has to be there. Level of how close individuals are, like so much is shared and revealed and, like that. But yeah, there's a lot of things. There's levels to this.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not just, it's only one example, you know what I mean? Like
Right,
there's
right.
many different scenarios and things to consider.
Yeah.
Different factors to consider, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you have some people who leak as well. So you share something with them and they run around and they just tell everybody else. Because then you have this situation where like you share something with someone, and then when before you even get a chance to announce, like I have a great news for everyone, that person already shared everything with everybody else and actually stole that person's thunder.
That's yeah.
And that becomes another issue as well. So it's like when you see that happening, it's like you can only share so much, because then you already know, you can announce to someone, hey, I'm about to get married, but before you can even get that out, that other person ran around leaking all over the place, broadcasting your business. And then, now what was very special and important and meaningful to you, the other person stole your thunder. And it's like, well, thanks.
That's just,
and it's not that what they're
really
really trying to do, but it's just sometimes people are excited. They're happy for the other person. You can't find fault with them being happy for the other person, but it's just something that happens, out of just sheer excitement, for lack of better words.
Yeah. That's true. That is definitely true. All right. And then numero.
What was it? 8, 9,
10. So passive aggression actions. So we're not getting into passive aggressiveness yet, but I'll just read this briefly. It says passive aggressive actions being passive aggressive. Passive aggressive means doing things that express anger without actual outburst. It involves inward smoldering expressions of anger rather than outward expressions. For example, if you're mad at your boss, you might purposely withhold completed work until the very last minute before the deadline. You could have submitted it earlier, but to annoy the boss, you submitted it as late as possible. Similarly, you might forget to do tasks that you think are unfairly assigned to you, or deliberately take a long time on a task. The This is a way of expressing anger or dissatisfaction without confronting the issue directly. Yeah, I definitely, I've had some previous employees that their regimen or their workload was X amount, and then I would notice like certain things and that were supposed to be done, and I'll ask later, like, hey, I noticed that this didn't happen. It's like, oh, yeah, so I just decided that I wasn't gonna do that anymore. And
when were you going to tell me?
Yeah, I was like, well, this is great news. This is great information. I'm glad we had a conversation about this. And it's like, oh, this was too much. I was like, well, I appreciate you sharing now what was going on. It would have been appropriate at that time, like, hey, let me know whenever you felt frustrated. Let me know, and I wouldn't find out till later that things weren't being done, and so that was extremely passive aggressive. Was it?
I think that's it. Yeah, the same one.
Yeah. Mumbling or soft speaking. 11.
That's number 11.
That's number 11. Often, a person who wants to avoid direct confrontation will mumble their discontent. That this is a way to express yourself passively, intending to be subversive, but not outwardly aggressive at the same time.
Is that one comedian who's like, unforgivable?
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Yes, steak. Yeah. But actually, it's more aggressive because like he gets aggressive.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I know it's comedy, but still,
Yeah. For example, you might see a child who speaks their discontent so quietly or unclearly that their parents cannot hear them, or hear a husband who mumbles his gripes with his wife. Then, when the wife says, "What did you say?" he says, "Oh, nothing." Of course, this sort of passive behavior may be a little subversive. May also be a little subversive acts that people do when confronted with oppressive environments where outwardly self-expression is curtailed to punish harshly. So, yeah, this is...
mumbling.
Yeah, I remember as a child, I would definitely say stuff under my breath. Stupid, just dumb, And mothers have great ears, What'd you say? No, I heard what you said. It's a rhetorical question. What'd you say? I heard you. But yeah, that's it. Yeah. 12, vague language. Yeah, I remember I had a really huge problem with this one. Vagueness in your language is often a way of avoiding responsibility or ensuring that you don't end up being boxed into a corner. It says during debate, but anyway. For example, we see vague language from legal teams and businesses who don't want to say anything that will cause them to have to give you a refund, etc. This sort of language is considered passive because it fails to be helpful or assert a perspective. It is designed to evade. Overall, vague language can lead to confusion and misunderstanding during an interaction, and it can also come across as dishonest or manipulative, which can harm trust or relationships. So I saw actually one of my previous employees was just like mentioned to me, like, why are you not being direct? Why are you kind of beating around the bush? And so and it was my way of not having to hurt anyone's feelings or having to address something that I felt may be uncomfortable.
Or maybe you weren't just ready to address at that time. You know how, like, maybe you actually have, like, need a little time to reflect and think over it so that when you deliver, the message or whatever needs to be delivered, that you're coming from the proper space.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to look at, the other options or sides of it. Not that you're purposely trying to be evasive. It's just maybe you just need, a moment or two or maybe a few days or whatever is necessary to look over everything carefully so you can properly present it in a way where the person can actually properly understand what you're conveying, and not feel like they're being attacked or challenged or something in that vein.
And I think that it comes down to, of course, time, total circumstance. However, in majority of situations, one can say, like you said, let me think on this. But in other scenarios where time is of the essence, one has to be assertive or discerning, or not discerning. One should be confident in themselves well enough to know that I can say something. And they generally say the first response is normally the most honest. First response is normally most honest. One can be transparent in a situation where time is of the essence and still be respectful and still be kind. For example, as I said, it comes down to time, place, circumstance. But if I fire someone, I say, "Why'd you fire me?" Let me get back to you on that. It's like, let me get a couple days. I'll tell you when you're home resting, trying to find work. It's like, it's
Let me get back to you.
it's a scenario. It's like, no, I need answers now. I need right now. And so we have to evaluate what is okay. This needs to be answered now. Versus, I think I can give me an hour, or give me a day or whatever. And I remember the one relationship that I was in, and ended everything. We were cordial, and then like almost a year later, I get this text message, all this information that would have been pertinent, like even a day later, a week later, a month later. But if you're processing this over a year later, then you weren't sincere about, being friends. You weren't sincere about whatever. And so there are times where, this has to be sooner than later, or this has to be now. Yeah. And understanding that is intelligence. Understanding that. Mama Swift said something.
Oh, something else?
Yeah.
Oh.
Hold on.
Oh no, that was new, right there. We already read that one. Oh.
Okay. Being passive aggressive is too much work. Being assertive is the way to go. Initially, learning how to be assertive requires work, but in the long run, it is a very valuable tool. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, vagueness of language. And then the next one is excessive hedging. So it says hedging, that's number 13. So excessive hedging is similar to vague language and refers to when you use phrases like sometimes, possibly, it might, or maybe, a hedge is not necessarily passive. Oftentimes, it is necessary. Indeed, this is the professor speaking, I teach my students to hedge in their academic writings all the time to leave space for alternative perspectives. But if you hedge excessively, it can be seen as a person being too passive in how they communicate. Here's an example.
Too passive.
Here's an example. I wouldn't mind going to the cinema today, but only if you want to. And if you want to do something else, let's do that instead. You know.
Yeah, that's passive. I was just thinking about in terms of writing, like different, someone's writing, a certain way. I'm like, how does that work?
Yeah.
I understand that example, but I thought the professor was saying, in terms of to his students, in terms of when they're writing things.
He writes, I'm guilty of this. It's a way to express myself while also pandering to the other person.
Pandering?
Pandering?
Well, you used the word pandering.
I read it right. Eastside education. To other person and not asserting myself too much. He says, I'm working on it. 14, indirect refusal. Indirect refusal. When this is when a person doesn't want to want to do something, but doesn't say no directly. Rather, they give vague excuses, delay, or give subtle hints. For example, you might ask your boss for a raise and your boss really doesn't want to say no, but they're not going to give you a raise. They might say, oh, the market's not good right now, so maybe in a few months. This is not only misleading, but it's a way for your boss to avoid confrontation. This behavior usually stems from a fear of conflict or a desire to avoid disappointing others. But as with the above example, it says, I'm sure that most employees would just want to hear the answer right away so that they can make an informed decision whether to apply for another job. And so this was, I can recall times where I just didn't want to say no. I would say maybe. Or often in our community, black communities, we when somebody asks you want to go somewhere, who's all coming?
Oh no, you gotta ask. You sometimes you have to ask who will be participating in these festivities, or who is going to be in this car ride.
Yeah. What time is it again? Even though you got messages confirming, or it may be what's another one? It may be, I'm on my way.
No, very well. It's gonna be another 3 or 4 hours before they show up.
Yeah, if they show up. If they show up.
Oh yes.
Yeah, it's like, or I got. They may not say no, but they say, oh yeah, sorry, I got certain things to do. I gotta do today, or it's like just say no, but most commonly is who's all coming.
Yeah.
That is the most common way of indirect refusal.
Yeah.
15, avoiding eye contact. So it says in Western cultures, the act of deliberately avoiding eye contact often occurs when someone feels uncomfortable and is trying to hide something. It is a sign that you don't want to engage in a conversation about a certain topic. It says we've all done it. The teacher is looking for someone to give an answer, trying to make eye contact with one of the students in front of them. We avoid eye contact to avoid from being selected. And I did that often. I would just keep my head in the books, make sure that you can feel them staring at you too. You know, it's like, nope, not gonna look up until they call your name. Like, dang it. You know, but boy.
When I used to sell cars, and you're presenting the numbers, you know, and so in short, when you present the numbers, you should, of course, give eye contact and basically be very clear in stating, I can't remember exactly how we used to say it, but basically circle the number of months in terms of number of payments, and then, you know, which monthly payment works for you.
Yeah.
You know, and then just not say anything and just let them circle, you know, the number of months in terms of how many payments they want to make and which amount, you know, actually works best for them in terms of making monthly payments. Yeah. And just let it go like that.
Yeah. And I noticed that in my now having my own business, I pay attention to people that if I shake their hand and they don't look me in the eye, I'm always cautious of them because I'm like, what are you hiding? Like, why is it that, you know? And of course, he was the professor, the author of this 18 communication techniques for passive, was mentioning Western cultures in particular, because some other cultures they don't look you in the eye, and that's just not their MO.
Yeah, maybe it's considered to be aggressive.
Aggressive.
You know how, like, if you're, I know this may not be necessarily the most appropriate example, but I think it's with Jane Goodall. She worked with chimpanzees. And then you have other people that work with gorillas, and you're not supposed to look them in their eyes directly because it's considered a form of aggression. You know, and then if you look them in, then they will attack you, kind of thing. So it's like some cultures, they don't look someone in the eye because it may be considered a form of aggressive behavior.
Aggression, yeah. But yeah, I think about, like, if somebody is not looking me in the eye, I'm like a little hesitant.
Yeah. But then when you do look at someone in the eye, especially when you're discussing certain things, important details, then that person who is the shopper, for lack of better words, when they see that you're giving them, you know, good solid eye contact, then it gives them, in one sense, peace of mind and confidence that they're making the right decision too.
Yeah, that is true. And
because if you're shifting around, if you look like, I don't know, this is the first thing, let's see if it'll work, you know, almost like as if you're trying to throw something against the wall and see if it sticks. If you look unsure, then they're definitely going to be unsure because they're looking for you to be solid and confident in your product, right? If you're selling something, they're looking for you to be confident in what you have going on. Otherwise, if you look like you don't know what you're doing or you're unsure yourself, then they will definitely feel unsure.
Yeah.
They'll feel that.
16, not asserting personal boundaries. This refers to...
Hey, get your knees away from my knees, man.
It took you long enough.
Well, I didn't know you was having a good time.
So 16, not asserting personal boundaries. This refers to failure to communicate one's limits or tolerances in a relationship or situation. Some people may avoid asserting their boundaries to avoid potential conflict out of fear of rejection, or because they undervalue their own needs. This can feel good because it maintains peace in the short term and can make you come across as accommodating or easygoing. But failing to assert personal boundaries can lead to disrespect directed at you by others who will exploit your inability to say no. For you, the person not asserting boundaries, you may also develop stress and resentment. So I think most of us who developed passive communication as children can agree to this as a common scenario. We've been in relationships in which, you know, we don't properly set a boundary, and of course it gets crossed habitually. And
Habitual line
A
crosser.
habitual line crosser. 17, overuse of filler words. The frequent use of like, and other filler words can be a form of passive communication. People often use filler words when they're unsure, nervous, or trying to gather their thoughts. This might reflect a lack of confidence in their ideas, or, this is a big one, fear of silence.
Most people don't like silence. When you're selling a car, the first person that speaks is the one that loses. Is usually that rule of thumb in terms of when you're looking over numbers and so forth. So if you are afraid of silence and you end up feeling uneasy, then you'll end up being the first one to speak, and therefore you end up losing the deal in some way, shape, or form. Okay. So that means now you got to come down in the price, meaning you're not going to get paid. In one sense, you gave that person a good deal, but you're not making any money.
It says filler words often are used by people who want to be passive. It helps them to buy time to think it might help you to be and it might help you to soften the delivery of your message, but overuse of filler words can be distracting for listeners. It can make the speaker appear less confident or competent. It can also be distracting from the clarity and impact of your message. I remember when I started doing network marketing about 15 plus years ago. And sometimes you have to speak in front of an audience. And at that time I didn't know that I was fluent in
you just did it there a second ago. You was like, I used
I was fluent in like, because every word, every sentence that I would say would have that in there. And I'm pretty sure while speaking, I've said it, but I know after so many times, okay, let me stop. And so I hear, when other people are speaking, when I hear more than 10 times within 2 minutes, I get distracted. And of course, this is just me being critical, thinking this way. I know not everyone is like that. But when you are aware of something, you can't turn it off.
That's true.
When you hear like,
that's true.
And other filler words, then your ears kind of perk up. But you also, unfortunately, the person using it may be really intelligent, may also know what they're talking about. But when you're aware of it and you hear it, it's distracting in some way, shape, or form, That's just my personal experience, and I'm pretty sure I've done it a few times here. Just did it. All right, 18. Minimizing your own achievements. It says it involves downplaying or dismissing your own successes or accomplishments. You might minimize your achievements out of a desire to express humility, or out of fear that others will see you as being boastful. You may also be of the belief that you are not deserving of praise, so this passive approach helps to minimize your impact on others. While this can make you appear humble or modest, consistently minimizing your own achievements can harm your self-esteem and undermine others' perceptions of your own competence and credibility.
Mention something real quick.
Yeah.
Of course, that's a real situation without a doubt, especially if it's done consistently, repetitively. But then also, there are some individuals who are aware of dynamics in a group. And so specifically, you may have some individuals who may have a false, grandiose, like a fantasy idea of you or someone. And sometimes you just have to, like, no, I'm simply just this. I'm not all this that you're concocting in your head. Because there are some people who do that.
Right.
And it's unfortunate, but yeah, you do have some people who, I think it's just in one sense, a little bit of part of American society. And what I mean by that is sometimes we'll look at certain people and treat them as if they're gods and goddesses, when they're just like another person, just like us. Not that they're not educated, not that they're not competent in what they do, but sometimes we put this value on some individuals that really truly isn't deserving. Like we may fluff up someone so much, and may not necessarily say it directly to them, but just in a certain environment or so, and then it's not really the case.
Yeah.
But in general, with the example or the actual point that is being made, if someone is constantly putting themselves down, that is something that has to be considered, because maybe they have a low self-esteem about themselves or low confidence or, like this. But then you also have some individuals, not saying that everyone must do this, but you have some individuals who are like the David Goggins, in the world. And yes, he uses certain words that could be considered harsh to the general population, right? He'll speak a certain way. Even C.T. Fletcher, these guys, they will speak a certain way. But when you actually look at them, they speak a certain way because they are not accepting mediocrity, and they're about pushing themselves forward to become the best person that they can be, or they speak themselves in such a way where, again, they're trying to live to the highest truth. Like they're trying to become the best, But again, that is you could say a technique or a method that should not necessarily be recommended to everyone, because again, there are some people who it's really a serious psychological issue or concern.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I think that this is more talking about when someone compliments you, not accepting the compliment. Oftentimes, even for myself, and I'm steadily working on this, and in some spiritual traditions, it's when one receives praise, we often dismiss it. Oh, no, this is not. But actually, we're a reflection of our lineage, a reflection of that in which we've learned, a reflection of those around us. So I remember hearing that if one offers you praise or respect or honors you, then the appropriate thing to do is thank you. Whatever you see is but a reflection, of yourself, or a reflection of my teacher or whatever.
Exactly. You accept the award on behalf of your teachers, and because again, if it wasn't for them teaching us and restoring the mercy upon us, right?
And that would be an appropriate way to do it. But say, no, I didn't do this. When you actually did it, then you're not being truthful. You're just like, well, you did it. And
if they're the Supreme Controller. That's what makes it more interesting.
Yeah.
But in general.
In
right?
general, yeah. Okay, so I wanted to read a couple things from Enneagram, then we'll wrap up. But there's one more.
Oh.
Mama Swift she's coming with the jewels. Okay. Sharing one's accomplishments can mean that you can also share your struggles and barriers, if any, while achieving your goals and accomplishments. And Mama says,
Mama Ewing.
Mama Ewing says, do you think that certain degrees of passive aggressive behavior depend on the circumstances?
Yeah. Time, place, and circumstance.
Yeah. So, I would say that one should understand the time there. The appropriate. What is the time? What is the place, and what is the circumstance? And then be proficient enough to know how to act in these different scenarios. Because there are times where being passive is necessary. In some cases, or what others may perceive as passive. For example, when the cop pulls you over, asks for your ID, you want to be submissive, get an ID. You don't want to say, for what? At least when you're black, you can't do that. But you just give the ID. But aggressive when someone is trying to hurt someone that you care about.
Yeah. You got to get up and stand up for your rights.
Get up, stand up.
Stand up for your rights.
Yeah.
And the great philosopher Bob Marley.
Don't give up the fight.
And don't give it up.
Yeah.
And the revolution will not be televised.
Who's that? I know the name.
Huey P. Newton or something like this?
No, goodness, we need
Black Panthers? What up?
I was frustrated. I was trying, his name's on the tip of my tongue, but the revolution will not be televised. And
I can't remember his name. Yeah.
Anyway, those born in the 50s and 60s know.
Yeah.
But
what do we know? We're just insurance agents.
We're just 80s babies. We're just 80s babies. Jill Scott. Yes.
Jill Scott. Yes.
Thank you. And so yeah, like the time, place, and circumstance, we have to know when it's appropriate to use these different, and even though we've only really just focused on passive communication the last 2 sessions, we're going to get into passive aggressive next session, then manipulative, then assertive, and then but we should learn how to react in every situation properly, in a mature way. And that means unlearning things from our childhood, unlearning things in our adulthood, and evolving in some way, shape, or form. Hopefully that helps. Yes. Thank you all
Just got here.
for this trivia question. Who said it? So let me read a couple things about the enneagram, and then we'll wrap up. So, as I mentioned last week and some sessions before, enneagram has really helped me in my relationships, helped me understand my shortcomings, my areas of opportunity, and to realize what my nature is and how to evolve past that. Because
hopefully it's conscious.
Excuse me. Yeah.
And not naughty.
Yeah. It's conscious.
Conscious by nature, not naughty by nature.
So so with Enneagram, you have a list of 9 different personality traits, and you have what are called wings or subtraits. And so I've come to find out my personality trait is peacemaker. I want to make peace. and generally peacemakers in their lowest level of health, emotional health, are extremely passive. And it says basic fear is loss or separation. Basic desire, inner stability, peace of mind. Enneagram 9 with characteristics of 8 means they're a referee. And Enneagram 9 with the wing or subcharacteristic wing 1. Say that really fast. The dreamer. And so it says key motivations for those who are peacemakers want to create harmony in their environment, to avoid conflicts and tension, to preserve things as they are, and to resist whatever would upset or disturb them. In brief, when moving in their direction of disintegration or stress or low level of health, complacent 9 suddenly become anxious and worried. However, when they're moving in their direction of integration or growth, slothful, self-neglecting 9s become self-developing, energetic, and healthy. And it gives examples of those who were Enneagram 9s, Queen Elizabeth, Dwight D. Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, individuals like that. But it says Enneagram type 9s are accepting, trusting, and stable. They are usually creative, optimistic, and supportive, but can also be too willing to go along with others to keep the peace. They want everything to go smoothly and to be without conflict, but they also can tend to be complacent, simplifying problems and minimizing anything upsetting. They typically have problems with inertia and stubbornness. At their best, indomitable and all-embracing, they are able to bring people together and heal conflicts. So that's all I'll say about myself. That's all I have to say about that. But yes, so this is, I think we've properly concluded the passive nature, passive communication. So next week we'll talk about passive aggressive or manipulative, whichever one is most intriguing at that time. So hopefully you all enjoyed yourself and what we shared was helpful in some ways, and hopefully the persons that asked me go deeper into detail about passive nature. Hopefully these additional examples help solidify the point. So any closing words?
Live responsibly.
Live responsibly. All right. And flex.
Keep flexing.
All right, till next time.